To get an idea of the kinds of things that we get by inheriting from active record base, let's take a look at some concrete examples. Because we don't have a web interface yet to deal with users, most of this lesson will involve interacting with the user model through the Rails console. And at this point, I don't actually want to change the database, but we'll be doing things like saving users that ordinarily would change the database. So what I'm going to do here is start the console in a sandbox. This is a common term in computing. A sandbox means that anything we do is temporary, and what will happen in the case of the Rails console is that when we leave it, it will roll back any changes we make. One of the things we get from inheriting from active record base is a constructor for new users. So let's do user.new. You can see this here. This user has attributes corresponding to these database attributes here. ID, name, email, created at, updated at. You can see those here. But of course, they're all nil initially because the constructor was just user.new. We didn't give it any information. But instead of just calling new, we can actually give it an initialization hash. So let's take a look at how that works. And actually, when we assign this to a variable, so user equals user.new, and then I'm going to give it key value pairs. Remember that I can do something like this. This gets converted to a symbol. This isn't a symbol per se, but this is converted to the symbol name with value of a string, Michael Hartle. And again, the key here is email. And notice that I don't have key value pairs for ID, created at, or updated at. Those are handled automatically by Rails. So let's take a look at this. You can see that we've now got our name and email right in here, but the other attributes are nil, so we can do this. Just go down the list. User.id is nil. User.name is what I said it was going to be. This is also the value I wanted. Just created it. Actually, let's see what, this will give me an error, right? You can see no method error. So let's fix that. Created at and updated at. Actually, doesn't matter. So those are nil. And it's important to understand at this point that we've only created this user in memory. This user exists in our console session, but it has not yet been persisted to the database. So let's actually do that, and we'll see that these ID, created at, and updated at columns get changed automatically by Rails. The way to do that is with the save command, and we can actually get a hint of whether this is going to work by seeing if this user is valid. So this user is valid. This valid question mark Boolean tells us essentially if we try to save this user, will it work? So let's actually do it with the save command. These are the kinds of methods we get by inheriting from active record base. So user.save. You might notice here that the console has output the SQL, or structured query language, actually used to insert the record into the database. You can actually learn a lot about SQL just by reading these messages, but that won't be important for this tutorial. What is important is this return value, true. That indicates that the save succeeded. If it fails, as it will when we add data validations later in this lesson, then user.save returns false. Let's take a look at the effect of that save on the user variable. You can see now that the ID, which before was nil, is now 1. And these created at and updated at columns have also been set automatically. So we can do something like this. User.id and the user.name and email are the same. We can do this. Created at and updated at. Later in this lesson, we'll see that when we change the values of this user in the database, this updated at column will automatically change, but created at will not. This is the permanent record of when the object was first saved to the database. Active record includes a nice compact way of combining new and save into a single step. Let's see how that works. So user here is the user model, user.create, and then I'll give it the same kind of initialization hash with name and email. Oops, I wanted to capitalize this. Doesn't matter, of course. Another user, and then do that, and I'm just going to make a third one. Call it foo. I'm going to assign this to a variable because I'm about to do something else with this variable. So that's a second user, or actually a third user, the second user created using user.create. And you can see from the SQL that's being output that this is being inserted into the database. One thing you might note is that the create method actually returns the object created by the database. So that means that foo here is actually the user created by this line. And so we can do things like this. This works just fine. And if we want to, we can also destroy this record in the database. So this is the complement to create. We're going to do foo.destroy. Now, if you look at the foo variable, it still exists just the way it was before, because this is the variable in memory. So to confirm that foo was actually deleted from the database, we need to learn how to actually find user objects in the database, and in this case, verify that foo doesn't exist.